I'm Kerry Hjertaas, and I'm here to talk about coordination and communication improvements through effective routines and share a few of the things that we've found works at our company. So a little bit about me. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada, right there, about right in the middle of the country. Hello. I've been working at the same company, Vecima Networks, for 17 and a half years now, 15 years as a developer and team lead under our old kind of more waterfall way of working. And then 2 years as Scrum Master and now 6 months as product owner, which is my current role. I led the initial less adoption at Vecima when I was a Scrum Master. Come on in. And since then, it was successful enough that 3 more product groups within Vecima have implemented less because of the success we've had with the commercial video group, which is where I work. So just a little bit of context on Vecima. What do? We are mostly a hardware company. We build appliances for cable TV and internet delivery. Come on in. This is Vecima custom hardware running Vecima custom software. And the main focus of all this stuff is on remote PHY and PON for internet delivery, and then commercial video solutions for installation in hotels, hospitals, universities, stadiums, things like that. And that's the group that I work with. So a little bit about the commercial video group. We're a group of teams. We are responsible for all the commercial video products. That includes legacy products from before our Agile switch, as well as developing new products. So when we were first created in 2020, our group, we inherited maintenance of 4 or 5 legacy products that had all been developed in a project-based flow, all with different teams, all often with no one who really owned them anymore. So we were responsible with providing ongoing maintenance, bug fixes, etc., for those products, in addition to developing new products in that space. This started as a single team as we grew up to 4 teams in 2021, and then most recently back down to 2 teams in early 2023 when the company decided to allocate more focus to another product group. So all of our team members are local in Saskatoon, but since COVID, come on in. That's all right. Everybody's been working from home, and even though we're all in the same city, we still work remotely almost all the time. We do try and get together about once every 2 or 3 months, since we can all just drive in, but that's about it. Some people might get together more often if they need to, but as a group, we try and get together every 2 or 3 months and, have dinner and pizza and maybe do an in-person workshop or something, mob testing sometimes. Anyway, so moving on from that, a little bit of what kind of coordination tools do we use? So we have Excel, which we use for tracking product backlog, metrics, and customer engagements. We tried tracking customer engagements using a Miro board, but our salespeople didn't want to use it. So we have switched to Excel, and that works better to get the salespeople to actually engage with it. We use Miro to do a short-term view of the backlog, which I'll show you guys in a bit. Refinement, sprint planning, our continuous improvement community, and we use it to generate an end of sprint report. We do use Jira. It's required by the company. So that's our team's sprint backlog, work logs, and our bug tracking tool. And Confluence for other documentation, meeting notes, Mattermost for instant messaging, and Zoom for remote meetings. And this one I'll point out is a very useful feature if you have remote teams, is that the closed captions feature of Zoom, automatic captions, and Teams can do this too, will let people who have English as a second language, who often can read English better than speak it, follow along with the discussion much easier. So we've got one person on our team like this, and it's much improved her participation in meetings since we turned this feature on. So I'm going to talk a little bit before we get into the routines about effective meeting practices. And this is not exactly a routine, but these are things that we focused on before we adopted some of the routines I want to mention here, and that were a big change from how we ran meetings previously. So within our group, we try and make sure all our meetings have an agenda and have a time box, that meetings have facilitators, discussions on topic, and that meetings have the correct audience or attendees. And like I said before, we had a lot of, or who's experienced this, when you show up to a meeting and then, can we start? Oh no, we're waiting for Jeff to come. And then you wait for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Oh, Jeff's here. Okay, let's start the meeting. Anybody ever had that experience? Yep. Okay. We used to do that too. So one of the things, meetings start about on time. Meetings end on time. If somebody's not there, okay, we'll go without them. If we need them for the meeting, we'll reschedule another day. We're not wasting people's time with meetings. So similarly, we try and make sure that if we do invite you to a meeting, you're going to get value from being there, and other people will get value from you being there. So that kind of thing. And that this in general has made the rest of the routines I'm going to show you much more effective. For what it's worth, our team finishes, I'd say 95% of our meetings in under the time box. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the coordination collaboration routines, the main focus of the talk. What you can see here is our multi-team board. We use this board to do refinement and planning, and this contains kind of a more accessible version, a little more graphically and visually friendly version of the product backlog than the Excel spreadsheet that we use for forecasting. I'll note that this is not, this did not spring out of here fully formed. This is the result of a lot of iteration, and this is the first major overhaul of this design, and we've been using this version since January of this year, and so far everybody seems to like it, so we haven't had to make any major changes. But the last version, people found there's a lot of things they found it confusing and stuff, so we've improved it now. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview on what their sections are. There's a section on here for planning and refinement routines. So that's the actual routines themselves are written down on the board. Section for the refinement marketplace, which is where we plan out the agenda for the upcoming refinement. We got a section on structured refinement techniques that developers or participants can reference for if they're doing a refinement session. And urgent items. This is where we handle bugs and things that maybe aren't part of the plan but need to get done right away. I'm sure you guys will have those come up. Section for refinement for those issues. Description of our deliverables, which are the larger features that the team is working on. The backlog items related to those deliverables, and then the refinement spaces for the deliverables. So first, refinement routine. I'll cover kind of what the routine is, as well as then showing the agenda areas, the refinement marketplace, and the results of some refinement that our teams have done. So to start with, we have a pre-refinement meeting that we do every week before refinement. And this is a quick get-together between the Scrum Master, Product Owner, and some one representative, usually from each of the Scrum teams. And here we figure out, what are we going to refine this week? Let's plan out our agenda. And you can see there's a more detailed checklist of what we want to do to make sure that the agenda has been covered. But the important thing here is that this is where we make sure that we're refining the correct thing. We're not going into too much detail on stuff that's going to come up 6 months from now because we're all going to forget it by then. We make sure that we're doing the correct level of detail for how far in the future the thing is coming up. And we make sure that if there's prep needed, that somebody is going to do that prep before the actual refinement session. So this is the refinement marketplace itself. You'll see that the result of this and what comes out of the refinement prep meeting is really the agenda for the next refinement meeting that's coming up. And the attendees, when they look at this, they get a quick view. We start refinement, we look at this, what is the meeting to come? Okay, breakout room 1, we're going to have these sessions. If we have breakout rooms at the same time, it lets attendees choose which one they want to go to and get a quick highlight of what is going to be covered in those rooms and maybe ask a few clarifying questions before we split up. I guess I'll note we used to split up into lots of rooms all the time. Since we've gone down to 2 teams, we often end up just having a single room and everybody goes together since it's not enough people to be worth breaking apart a lot. The other thing here is that this helps inform off-team stakeholders who might be coming in terms of which refinement session they come to. For example, if we have an attendee from manufacturing, you might go, oh, I better go to breakout room 2 where we're covering the integration with manufacturing portion or whatever it is. So that's another part of this section, as well as highlighting specific people who need to be there because they actually know what's being talked about. Refinement itself, that's the quick agenda, just largely here to make sure that we don't see anything, don't forget anything during refinement. But that's kind of what we cover. Leading team representatives kind of cover whatever the topic is in the level of detail we previously discussed that we're going to do. And the refinement itself is an hour, and we do it every week. So a few examples of what we might do in refinement. Probably not too groundbreaking, but I figured I'd show them quickly anyway. We do some diagrams, various types. We could do maybe creating some UI mockups, creating some flowcharts or other things. Here's some screenshots from a previous product that we were thinking about implementing similar features from. We might use it to develop an understanding with off-team stakeholders, and see here that guy, Jack, who's called out in that note, is from our manufacturing group. So this was a feature that required actions from both R&D and manufacturing in order to finish implementing it. We also, of course, create and split backlog items. So this is what that looks like. Yellow items are ones that still need more refining. Orange ones are ready to be taken into a sprint. And to highlight where we saw improvements here, prior to this, our refinement consisted of making JIRA tickets. And what we did when we were creating JIRA tickets, often it ended up being the team that made the tickets was the team that would do the work on the tickets. And therefore, other people, if they wanted to work on it, really couldn't, or they didn't have the context to be able to do so. So as a result, cross-team collaboration was very difficult. New structure here encourages cross-team learning. People from more than one Scrum team go to the same refinement sessions. They therefore have the background information on what the topic is. Stakeholders can participate more effectively, especially at the early parts of the refinement where it's more like diagrams and high-level understanding. Often stakeholders can contribute more there, and they don't need to come when we're down to the nitty-gritty details. And context is in the same place as the work to be done. It's not hidden in a bunch of JIRA tickets that you might forget where they are, which is often a problem we had later. We'd do the work down the road. No one would remember where the tickets were, and they'd make whole new ones instead of using the ones we'd already refined before. Okay, next, planning routine. And I'm going to cover the areas of the board that we look at during sprint planning. So first, we've got a section here in the routine itself where we cover product owner's wishes. This really outlines the value of the upcoming sprint for everyone so that everyone understands it and allows everybody an opportunity to ask questions about it, maybe bring up some trade-offs. Sometimes team member might say, well, I see you didn't mention, issue X that I've been working on for a bit. Are you saying I shouldn't do that this sprint, or did you forget? And then we can clarify what the issue is there. So high-level direction for the sprint. Next section here, and this is where we diverge a little bit from the typical less flow, I think, is that we have we immediately after this initial overview of the sprint, we do what we call pre-planning, where we split up into breakout rooms by team. And here we kind of cover all of the essentially capacity, various things that the team might need to be aware of for the upcoming sprint. So let's see here. Each team determines its capacity for the next sprint. This is taking into account stuff like vacation, other things that might be coming up, like if a team member is participating in a bunch of job interviews in the upcoming sprint, they should make the team aware of that to say they won't have as much time to do work, stuff like that. The teams themselves start looking over the items on the backlog and claim ones that they want to work on for the upcoming sprint. And same thing with the deliverables section. So they look at the urgent section first and then the deliverables section. And then they fill out down here a section for what their team focus is going to be for the upcoming sprint. After that last one was about 20 minutes. Then we come back together and do planning one. So the first part of that is we review the sprint focus that all of the teams came up with in the pre-planning section. Assuming that I, as product owner, am okay with what the teams have chosen to focus on, and maybe have a few questions, we look at that quickly and then move on to reviewing urgent items. And the urgent items section, this is where, as I mentioned earlier, we cover anything that's not really part of an ongoing larger deliverable, like so new bugs, maybe, or not even bugs, just maintenance items, maybe something in the environment changed and our old products need to change to continue working. We had a bunch of these where suddenly certificates expired because we thought the product would last 10 years in the field and it's been out there for 15 plus, and suddenly certificate's expired, now it doesn't connect to the network anymore, or it won't in a month or whatever it is. So quickly action those, things like that. So the highlight here, we review this with the teams, make sure that if I see an item like this one where, oh, no team has claimed this one yet, this gives an opportunity of saying, look, this has to get done this sprint. Who's going to do this? And we can have the trade-off discussion of, well, if we do that, it means we won't be able to do this other thing. Is that okay? And negotiate a little bit on those items. And sometimes we might decide, yeah, it's okay for this one to not get done this sprint. Or sometimes we might say it has to be done right now. So there's an example of a team logo that they use to claim an item. In this case, that's from our Ultra teams. They're using an Ultra Ball from Pokemon as their logo. And this one, the green, is an example of a completed item. And normally this would be removed before sprint planning, but I just left it here to show you guys what it looks like. Next part, we do essentially the same thing for each deliverable that's in progress. Look it over, team claims items. The example we've got here, we'd expect that this deliverable would be done this sprint, as all of the work is either green, indicating it's done now, or it's blue, showing that it is going to be in progress for the current sprint. So we'd hope that this will be finished. And the black ones are ones we originally planned in and then decided we didn't need anymore. Here's an example completed deliverable. And this is just here to show you guys what this would look like. Once a deliverable is in this state, we generally copy it to another Miro board where we keep all the stale stuff that's already been done in case we need to reference the refinement or anything else again, and remove it from the main board where we're working and no longer in our active backlog. And this one is interesting because you can see that several different teams, 3 teams specifically here, participated in completing this deliverable together. So there's an example of cross-team collaboration on getting work done. Here's another example of one that is not finished. And you can see right there, big red sticky. Does this cover all the work? No, there's more work. Makes it very obvious. But this one got started. So some preliminary work has been done here and some work is ready to go, but there's still more breakdown to be done. And then final part of planning 1, we do a little bit of a wrap up. This one's here kind of just for fun mostly, but there's a little bit of value to it too. Teams can drag their icon on here and they say, how likely do you think that all the items your team's taking on are actually going to get done this sprint? And so if they say, you know, we don't think so, like the example here, the prime team's saying we've got low confidence this sprint, that might be an opportunity for some discussion to say, yeah, why is this? And maybe we have to go back and adjust the plan on this one. Or maybe we're good and it's just the nature of this work that it's highly speculative and they don't feel confident about it yet. So again, another check and balance there, I guess, to make sure we're doing a good job of figuring out what the work is and having the conversations where we need to. After that, we go into planning 2. So the teams split apart. At this point, they're largely working on creating JIRA tickets from the work that they've decided to take into the sprint from the Miro board. And this might involve further breakdown into tasks. Like if they have a task that has maybe, a user interface component, an API component, some kind of backend component, and an automated test component to it, they might split that into 4 different tasks in their sprint backlog if they choose to do it that way. They might not. It's up to the team. And then we do this in JIRA. Because Vecima policy requires JIRA, we have some integration between our automatic code review appliance and things like that with JIRA. So it has to be used there. And therefore, we do the sprint backlog itself in JIRA. And I guess I'll note here that the JIRA cards plugin for Miro could be a big time saver for us on the spot. But so far, our IT department had some security concerns about it and said we can't use it. That is maybe changing, but hasn't yet as of when I made this presentation. And I guess I'll note teams, as on the bullet point, teams often do their own relative estimation here as an additional check for can we actually get our work done in this sprint once we've done the full breakdown into tasks. And there's sprint backlog in JIRA. Last part of the planning routine is post-sprint administration, rollover admin, and this is really a small group of us, me and Scrum Masters largely. We take the results of the sprint review, sprint planning, update the roadmap and communicate the updated information to stakeholders so that everybody knows what does the new plan look like after the end of that sprint. So prior to these changes or adopting these routines, we often did not know what each other was working on. There was a lot of, the teams would just plan on their own, and they'd take on the work they'd previously refined, and there was really very little cross-team communication. Cross-team collaboration was difficult as a result, and often the teams did not close the loop back to the product owner on what they actually decided to do in the sprint. They might have said in planning 1, oh yeah, we'll do all these things. Then in planning 2, gone, oh, we'll actually only do 2/3 of those things because we don't have room for the rest. And often they wouldn't tell the product owner, so he'd assume all those things were in progress, and they weren't. So now we've got all these various sync up points where we review this together, make sure that it's all there, so that's much better. We have better consideration of team capacity for the upcoming sprint, factoring in vacations and so on. And as a result of the PO knowing better and the teams knowing better, we also have better communication with stakeholders when we create this updated roadmap at the end. Okay, daily scrum. We don't have a real big routine here. The only interesting bit I wanted to add that we do and add it into our daily scrum is code review. So Vecima has a mandatory code review as a technical excellence practice, and this has been around for years. Used to be very much asynchronous because everyone worked by themselves. So it was back before the Scrum days. So we'd get a lot of, you get added to a code review, and the general guidance was sometime in the next 2 weeks, you should review this code. So sprint is 2 weeks. That's not really soon enough. What we started seeing a lot of was all the code reviews would happen on the last or second last day of sprint. And then and that leads to a bunch of bugs, or everything merges at the same time. There's no real good opportunity to test it, and so on. So when I was developing, I said, hey, let's try and tackle this. Let's just review our code together in the daily scrum. And my team started doing it. We thought it was great. We told the other teams, they started doing it, thought it was great. It's now spread out from our group to the rest of the company as well, and everybody's doing this. And the upside here is if it's a small review, you can just look at it. Oh, yeah, it's 10 lines. Okay, that looks good. Let's merge it right there during Scrum, daily Scrum meeting. If it's a bigger one, it lets the developer who wrote the code kind of explain what it's about, and then makes the code review less intimidating when somebody else goes to review it later. So removes barrier to entry. They go, oh, okay, I'll take the extra 20 minutes after daily Scrum and review it in more detail by myself. And as an interesting point, this particular practice is one that actually I think works better in a remote meeting setting than in person because everyone's already at their own computer. It's hard probably to review code up on a board like this, especially if it's not as big a one as this. If you're all at your own computer, you can open the code yourselves. We can just say, let's all take 3 minutes, read this code, make any comments, discuss, merge. It can be very fast. So another one of our practices we have about working together is we have a weekly cross-team meeting. You'll see I blocked out a bit of stuff here, but other than the stuff that's blocked out that I felt was maybe confidential information, this is a real example of the notes from this meeting. This originally got created as an attempt to address that problem I mentioned earlier of our teams not knowing what each other was working on. So we said, okay, let's add an extra meeting so we can specifically bring that up and talk about what each other's working on. With the improved planning routine now, that's not so much of a problem, but the meeting stuck around, and it's kind of become a catch-all meeting for all sorts of things now. So you can see here, we've got an announcements section. So there I'm telling everybody, hey, I'm going to be at a conference next week, so you probably won't be as responsive to questions if you need it. Announce random other things. There's a company barbecue on Friday if everybody wants to go. Remember to sign up, whatever that might be. The Jira server is going to be down on this weekend. Don't do work because you won't be able to access it, whatever that might be in the announcements. We have a discussion section. We would generally pre-populate topics we want to talk about with everybody. And or we've got and you can see here that the notes, so really this is to fill in the blanks. We populate the topics, and then we take the notes right here in the template. And we've got an open floor section, which allows anybody to bring up a new topic during this meeting that might have come up. And this one isn't always used, but it's probably used 30 to 40% of the time that we have this meeting, and somebody will bring up something new. Another new one here is this we added about 6 months ago to improve communication with the team. with what's going on with sales. So you can see here that this could be really anything sales related. Hey, we sold 15 systems to a customer, or it might be we've started talks with a new customer. They are interested in this set of features. Here's where that's going, whatever it is, just the early stuff that normally we maybe wouldn't previously have told the developers until much later. This helps them stay much more connected with the product and understand where it's at from a sales standpoint. We still do our sync up on sprint progress, even though we have our improved planning routine now. Developers still like this. So it also lets us, I didn't show it here, but our newest version of this template includes a section on what are we going to demo at the sprint review, which often isn't apparent at the beginning of the sprint. But when we do this a few days before end of sprint, usually the teams have a pretty good idea of what they can demo. And important one here, we used to always forget to tell our technical writer when we had updated documentation. So we specifically added this bullet point in here as what do we need to tell Ben about, so it gets put in the new documents. And this has worked really well, so we remember to do this now. Sprint review. I think this one's not too crazy. We review sprint results. We have a brief section where we have our sales engineers talk a little bit about the customer engagements that they're doing. And this is in part because this is one of the only meetings where with the development team that the sales engineering people usually come to. And this also lets other stakeholders hear directly from them what's going on with customer engagement. We do time box that to 5 minutes though, so that it doesn't take up the whole time. Then we move into demos, which we do via screen share on Zoom. And whoever is taking notes takes notes there, and you'll see that the bolded items in this section are the actions we're taking from the feedback we received from the demos. So makes for an easy way to mark which feedback needs to be actioned. List some other accomplishments, section for other feedback from stakeholders not related to demos, and we attach a video to this Confluence page once it's done so that anybody who wasn't there, if they want to, can go and watch the sprint review later. After that, we've got our team retrospective, and this is filled in by the team themselves, the end of each sprint. And actually this part, this top box is done before the review that I just showed you. And and some sections of it, if you look back, this top box is actually automatically pulled from what the teams have filled in as far as how their sprint went in the team review. So a little bit of automation there. Team discusses how the sprint went. Nothing too crazy here. And they highlight items that they want to discuss in the overall retro. And again, with automation, this gets pulled automatically into another page for later. Standard kind of determine actions next sprint. And important reminder to update our Miro board, the multi-team board, because people were forgetting to do this at the end of the sprint. So we stuck that in there, and that's helped. What's that? Tugboats. I'll get to those in a second. Okay. Or maybe I'll come back. Well, I'll do it now. Sure, that's a good point, Jürgen. So the tugboats is a way that we decided to mark tickets on that Miro board, stuff that didn't get done in a sprint. It gets a tugboat icon stuck on it. And so if an item builds up a lot of tugboat items, it makes it obvious that it's been not done for a while and that maybe we need to do something about it. But it was an attempt to see like, hey, we've got a lot of things that aren't getting done. Can we improve it this way? We don't do this. I know Jürgen's mentioned another company he works with. They had teams that had too many items stick around for too long. We're required to buy beer for everyone else. We have not implemented that, but maybe it's something we could try if it becomes a problem. Okay, overall retrospective. Got a section here where we review and discuss a previous change. And this is not a change from last sprint. This is a change from a long time ago. So something, 2-3 months, a year ago, whatever it was. We look back and say, hey, here's the thing we did a while back. How are we feeling about it now? How's this aged over time? And we added this because we often realized we weren't looking at old things. We were only looking at what was the most recent change. So we explicitly added this item into the sprint review agenda to make sure we covered that. And there's been sometimes it's like, yep, that's great, it's doing what it is. Or sometimes we hear, no, you know what, I really don't like that thing, or I never use that thing we all agreed to do or whatever, and then we might just stop doing it or change it or whatever it might be. We also have this section where we evaluate how we did on our definition of done. this is to hold ourselves accountable. We made this definition of done, and then, you know, it sat over on its definition of done workshop board, and then no one looked at it. So we decided we need a way to hold ourselves accountable to this. So we put it here in the overall retrospective, and the teams vote on this at the end of each sprint. So we used to just vote by thumbs up. We've switched it now to polls and Zoom, since that's easier to get data from everybody, and that works pretty well. And I guess worth noting, sorry, this whole section that we just covered is actually, this is all new in the last about 7 or 8 months. Prior to this, we didn't have this chunk in our overall retro. So the routine has evolved, which is one of the good points about it. All right. Next, we discuss any items that were brought up from the team retros. You can see at the top is where they were automatically copied over from the other pages. And then we copy paste out of those boxes and stick them in this bottom table to add more detailed discussion notes over here. And we also have an opportunity for people to bring up other items if they want to, and review of past actions and any new ones that came from that discussion. Next part is we have our continuous improvement community, which we also coordinate with the Miro board. This has been the main way that we've driven improvement within the commercial video group since we started doing it in May of 2022. Before having this community, we didn't really have a systemic way of driving improvements, as kind of every Scrum Master might do some stuff, but we didn't really have any good way of coordinating amongst the different Scrum Masters or different efforts that were ongoing, and making sure that all the improvements happening were necessarily driving toward the same goals. So on this thing, we kind of track 4 strategic capabilities, which you can see here. Can't see them in detail here, but that's what they are. We've ordered them by importance, which is kind of, and we always start with the most important one when we review these things, so you can see what it is we're doing first, and make sure that if the discussion is cut short, we always cover the most important stuff first. And I want to thank Jürgen for this routine, because he provided this to us when he was working with us as a consultant, and it's been super helpful at keeping us productive and driving towards shared goals. So a little bit of overview on this board. We got a section with the routines for the various meetings we have. We've got a section for strategic capabilities and definitions of them, section with metrics, the actions we're taking, and an inbox for any new problems or requests that have come up. So our first meeting we have for this, and we do this every second Thursday after a new sprint starts. Our sprints are 2 weeks. It's a 1-hour time box where we review the various metrics that we maintain. And you can see here, we look at each metric within each strategic capability. A green metric indicates this time around it's good. And a red metric like this one indicates we've got some work to do on this one this time. It's not meeting our success criteria. And even a green metric, though, it doesn't just go, oh, it's green, let's ignore it. If it's consistently green, it might mean either we need to push ourselves harder toward a higher level of performance, or we can say, you know what, we don't need this metric anymore. We're doing well enough on that thing. Let's find a new one. Red metrics means we've got to actually do something to improve. We might also in this meeting decide that, you know, we are doing well and everything we're tracking. We've met our goals with this capability we're working on, and maybe it's time to move on to something else. So next, we've got on the opposite week from on the week where we don't have the start of a sprint, we do this deliver value meeting. It's another 1-hour time box meeting, and we review any urgent issues in the ongoing column here. And the most important main part of this is we review these next and future columns to see if our planned actions still make sense. This is really like a backlog review with the stakeholders, which are the product owner, Scrum Masters, and representatives from the teams, of does our backlog of improvement work still make sense given the change of context? And often we might go, you know, we decided we should do this thing, but, you know, example, maybe if we get the Jira cards plug in, this task here to add estimates to our multi-team board no longer matters, because now we'll have integration with Jira cards. So we'll probably get some new ones relating to that as an example there. But so this lets us make sure we're not continuing to plan work that is no longer needed. And the last one out of this group of meetings is our act and respond meeting. This one we do every Monday. It's a 30-minute time box. This is an opportunity to address any new problems or requests. We review done items and delete them off the board if everybody agrees that they're actually done. We review our ongoing items, see if anybody needs help. Again, if something's been sitting there for a while, maybe whoever's doing it is busy or something and needs some help with it. And we review agenda items. So things like, did we remember to prep the refinement space this week? Did we remember to prep the review page? Stuff like that during this meeting. And of course, if anything needs to change state, that's an opportunity to do it. Yay. Hopefully I've prepped this presentation, since you can see I'm giving it right now. So what do our developers think of these routines? Eric says cross-team meeting is good to make sure we're staying on top of things. Kyle says he likes the sales update during the cross-team meeting. It makes the product feel more real. Jonas says routines are massively valuable, especially when they're new, to make sure that we don't forget steps. Several developers saying that the routines on the Miro boards are very useful. And maybe the biggest praise here, oh no, not this one. Biggest praise is this one. There isn't anything we do that I massively dislike. Yeah, that's what he said. I figured I'd throw it on there. So, but other point there, routines are like comments in code. It's great to have the steps where you're already looking. A little bit, why are routines important? Power and value of routines. Routines lead to predictable meetings. People can step up to facilitate a meeting because the routine is right there. So it gives you facilitator redundancy. Routines make sure you don't forget steps in the work you're trying to accomplish. Routines can be adjusted over time to improve outcomes. And routines are the first steps to forming habits, and good habits can lead to great outcomes. And I just wanted to mention here this video from Kurzgesagt on YouTube called Change Your Life One Tiny Step at a Time. It also shows how to leverage existing habits into improved outcomes, more from a personal improvement standpoint, but I think it's very applicable here as well. And I just wanted to say here also that while I was Scrum Master and helping develop a lot of the routines that I've just shown you, I actually was thinking at that time that developing these routines might have been the most important part of my job as Scrum Master, because of how much improvement in effectiveness of these events I was seeing as a result of the adoption of these routines. It was really quite significant. So to summarize, where did our routines drive improvement? Improved transparency of upcoming and in-progress work, transparency of customer needs. Now the devs actually know what's going on with the customers, which is helpful, and creating an effective system of continuous improvement. Main takeaways: put routines where the eyeballs are. Put them where people are already looking. If you put them somewhere else, off in a corner, off in another page, they won't get looked at. People will forget about them. Put them where they already have to look to do the work. Strong facilitation the first few times you create a new routine is critical to get it to stick. People will forget it exists unless you're there to remind them the first few times, and then they'll build the routine or the habit of looking at the routine in order to get the work done. Routines can be used for almost any recurring activity. You don't have to, but there's good reason to do it sometimes. And take advantage of existing habits and add routines to drive them towards improved outcomes. So like if you have a meeting and people are used to coming to that meeting, but it's not that great, maybe you can add a routine or templates like I've shown here to improve the value of that meeting. And that's all. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question about, you were talking about this board
Yep.
capabilities.
Yes.
I'm just interested in what you mean by these
Sure. Let me just throw it up.
capabilities.
Sure. Let me throw it up on the screen here. If so, let me.
Those yellow,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not used to navigating Miro with the mouse or with the trackpad, but there we go. Oh, other way. Let me show you some capabilities. So this can kind of see what they are here as an example. So increased cross-team collaboration We've got that one. We've got one here about robust build and test environments. We were noticing stuff like we have equipment that isn't reliably operating as part of our automated test environment. This one is saying we randomly have issues where our merges don't merge. And it's not because the code isn't working. It's like people just say retrigger the merge check and then it works. So why is that? So we actually started tracking that. Various things like this. We've got one up here for team ownership and health. So just is the team actually owning their work and really taking responsibility for getting the work done, stuff like that. So this is whatever makes sense within your context you could put here, but this lets us group and focus our improvement actions toward some common set of goals we've agreed on.
Clear. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
To round up, I still have a few questions.
Sure.
I reckon that you don't.
I reckon that the best advertisement for this won't be that you don't need more documentation.
Yeah.
So it's how you sell it for within the company. One info that I got is that we should slowly head to the main room for the open space introduction. But it was a great talk, and personally, I'm gonna apply a lot of that stuff because visualization is the foundation of a lot of stuff. And thank you for sharing this.
Oh, thank you. All right, so are we all wrapped up here? Yeah, I guess we've got to go back. Yeah, so all right, thanks everybody.